The stars had always called to Kate Morrison. Even as a child growing up in a small town in Ohio, she would sit on her grandfather's porch and stare at the night sky. Her grandfather Daniel would point out the constellations and tell her stories about the old days, about camping in the mountains and surviving with nothing but a knife and good sense. She never forgot those lessons. Now she was commander of the starship Resolute, and the stars were her home. The ship was on a routine supply run to the Kepler colonies when everything changed. Kate sat in the command chair, watching the darkness of space through the main viewport. A crew of 43 worked quietly at their stations. It was a calm day. Nothing special. Nothing dangerous. Then the alarms started screaming. "Commander, we have a contact," said her first officer, Chris Lawson. He was a tall man with steady hands and a calm voice. Kate had served with him for 6 years. She trusted him completely. "It's big. Really big." Kate stood and walked to his station. The sensor display showed something impossible. A vessel so large it made the Resolute look like a toy. It had appeared from nowhere, as if it had simply stepped out of empty space. "That's not possible," Kate said quietly. "Nothing that size can move that fast." "It's not from any species we know," Chris replied. His voice was still calm, but Kate could see the fear in his eyes. "Commander, it's pulling us in." The Resolute shuddered. The engines screamed as they fought against some invisible force, but it was useless. The massive ship drew them closer like a magnet pulling at iron. Kate watched through the viewport as they approached a docking bay large enough to swallow a dozen ships like hers. "All hands, stay at your stations," Kate announced through the ship's communication system. "We don't know what this is. Stay calm. Stay ready." The Resolute settled into the alien bay with a gentle thud. The engines died. Every system on the ship went dark, except for emergency lights. Kate's crew looked to her, their faces pale in the red glow. "With me," Kate said to Chris. "Everyone else, stay here and wait for my orders." They walked to the main airlock. Before Kate could reach for the controls, the door opened on its own. Beyond it was a corridor of smooth black metal, lit by soft white light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Kate stepped through first. She always stepped through first. The corridor led to a massive chamber. The ceiling was so high she could barely see it. Strange shapes floated in the air above them, shifting and changing like smoke given form. Kate counted 7 of them. They were not human. They were not anything she had ever seen. One of the shapes descended. It was larger than the others, and as it came closer, Kate could make out something like a face. Eyes that burned with ancient light. A mouth that did not move but somehow spoke. "Humanity," the voice said. It echoed inside Kate's head rather than in her ears. "We are the Arbitrators. We have watched your species spread into this region of space. We have watched you build your ships and your colonies. Now we must judge you." Kate did not step back. She did not show fear. "Judge us for what?" "For worthiness," the Arbitrator replied. "We are ancient. We have existed since before your son was born. We have seen 10,000 species rise and fall. Some were worthy of the stars. Some were not. Those who were not have been contained. They remain on their home worlds, never to leave. They do not even remember that the stars once called to them." Kate felt cold. "And you want to judge humanity?" "Yes, one of you will be tested. One of you will represent your entire species. If they pass, humanity may continue. If they fail, humanity will be contained. Forever." The chamber was silent. Chris stood frozen beside her, his face white. Kate thought about her crew. She thought about Earth. She thought about the billions of humans who had no idea that their future was being decided in this alien chamber. "I'll do it," she said. Chris grabbed her arm. "Commander, no. We should discuss this. We should contact Earth. We should... There's no time, Kate said. She looked at him and tried to smile. Take care of the crew, Chris, whatever happens. Get them home. The arbitrator descended further until it was directly in front of Kate. Its eyes studied her with something that might have been curiosity. You volunteer? You do not ask what the test will be. Would it matter? Kate asked. You've already decided to judge us. Someone has to face it. It might as well be me. Interesting, the arbitrator said. Most species argue. They bargain. They beg. You simply accept. Accepting reality isn't the same as giving up, Kate replied. Tell me what I have to do. The arbitrator was silent for a moment. Then it spoke again. The test is survival. You will be taken to a world we have prepared. You will have nothing. No tools. No weapons. No communication. No aid. You will have 40 cycles to survive. If you live, humanity passes. If you die, humanity fails. Kate nodded slowly. Just survival? That's it? That is everything, the arbitrator said. Survival is the foundation of all worthy species. Those who cannot survive alone cannot be trusted with the stars. Kate took a deep breath. She looked at Chris one last time. He was trying not to cry. She wanted to tell him it would be okay, but she did not know if that was true. I'm ready, she said. The world dissolved around her. She felt herself falling through light and shadow, through cold and heat, through something that felt like being taken apart and put back together. Then it stopped. Kate stood on hard, rocky ground. The air was thin and hot. Above her, 2 suns burned in an orange sky. Around her, alien wilderness stretched in every direction. Strange plants with purple leaves. Distant mountains that looked like broken teeth. The sound of wind and nothing else. She looked down at herself. Her uniform was gone. She wore simple gray clothing, thin and light. Her boots were gone. Her communicator was gone. Everything was gone. A cold voice spoke in her mind. 40 cycles. Survive. Prove your species is worthy of the stars. No aid will come. Begin. Then the voice was gone, and Kate was alone. She stood still for a long moment. She let herself feel the fear, the loneliness, the weight of what was happening. She let it wash over her like a wave. Then she let it go. She looked around at the hostile world. She took a breath of the thin, hot air. And then she started walking. There was no point in standing still. There was no point in crying or screaming or giving up. She had 40 cycles. She had her mind. She had her hands. She had everything her grandfather had ever taught her. Kate Morrison began to survive. Kate walked for hours before she found shelter. The twin suns beat down on her like hammers. The air was so hot that breathing felt like swallowing fire. Her feet ached from the rocky ground, and her thin clothing offered no protection from the heat. But she did not stop. She could not stop. She remembered what her grandfather had taught her. The first thing you need is shelter. Without shelter, you're just waiting to die. She found it near the base of a small cliff, a rocky overhang that created a natural cave. It was not deep, but it was deep enough. The rock blocked the suns and created shadow. The temperature dropped immediately. Kate sat down and let herself rest for the first time since arriving. She looked at her surroundings carefully. The cave floor was dry and sandy. There were no signs of animals using it. No bones, no droppings, no marks on the walls. It was not perfect, but it would do for now. She did not sleep that first night. She sat at the mouth of the cave and watched the world. The twin suns set together, painting the sky in shades of red and purple. Then came the darkness, and with it came the cold. The temperature fell so fast that Kate started shivering within minutes. She pulled her knees to her chest and wrapped her arms around herself, trying to keep warm. In the darkness, she heard things moving. Clicking sounds. Heavy footsteps. Something screamed in the distance, a high, terrible sound that made her skin crawl. She stayed perfectly still and watched the shadows. When the suns rose again, she saw them. The creatures were resting in a group about 200 meters from her cave. They were large, about the size of wolves, with 6 legs and skin that looked like dark leather. Their heads were flat and wide, covered in small holes that Kate guessed were some kind of sensing organs. They did not seem to see her. They were sleeping in a pile, their bodies tangled together for warmth. Kate studied them for a long time. She counted 12. She noted how they slept, how they breathed, how their muscles twitched. She was not afraid. She was learning. The next 3 cycles followed a pattern. Kate watched and waited. She did not try to hunt. She did not try to explore too far from her shelter. She simply observed. She discovered that the 6-legged creatures hunted at dusk, when the heat was fading but the cold had not yet arrived. They used their sensing organs to track heat. At night, they slept together. During the day, they hid from the suns in caves. Much like hers, she learned which plants were safe to eat by watching smaller animals. There were tiny creatures that looked like insects with too many legs. They ate certain plants and avoided others. Kate tried the plants they ate. Some tasted terrible. Some tasted like nothing at all. But none of them made her sick. She found water on the 4th cycle. A small stream that ran between 2 hills, fed by some underground source. The water was murky and brown, but she was so thirsty she almost drank it straight away. She stopped herself just in time. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. Bad water will kill you faster than no water. Always filter. Always boil if you can. She could not boil water yet. She had no fire, but she could filter. She dug a hole near the stream and let water seep into it through the ground. The soil acted as a natural filter, removing the worst of the dirt. The water that collected was still not perfectly clean, but it was better. She drank slowly, carefully, waiting to see if her stomach would reject it. It did not. She drank more. On the 5th cycle, Kate began to build. She found rocks with sharp edges and smashed them against harder rocks until they broke into pieces. She examined each piece until she found one that was thin and pointed. She spent hours working it against another rock, shaping it, sharpening it. By the time the sun set, she had a crude knife. It was not beautiful. It was not perfect. But it was hers, and it would cut. On the 6th cycle, she made a spear. She found a long, straight branch from one of the alien trees and used her knife to strip away the bark. She sharpened one end to a point. It was heavy and rough in her hands, but when she threw it at a rock, it stuck. She smiled for the first time since arriving. The Arbitrators watched her from somewhere far above the world. They watched through sensors hidden in the rocks and the trees and the sky itself. They saw everything she did. Varath, the leader of the Arbitrators, observed with particular interest. He had judged species for 3,000 years. He had seen countless beings thrown into survival situations. Most panicked immediately. They ran in random directions. They ate whatever they found without testing it. They tried to fight predators with bare hands. They died within the first few cycles. This human was different. She has not acted yet, one of the other Arbitrators noted. She sits and watches. Is she afraid? No, Varath replied. She is learning. She is waiting until she understands before she moves. This is rare. The predators have not found her yet. They will. The question is whether she will be ready. Kate was getting ready. On the 7th cycle, she built her first fire. She had gathered materials for days. Dry grass for tinder. Small twigs for kindling, larger branches for fuel. She had found 2 rocks that sparked when struck together. Her grandfather had shown her this technique when she was 12 years old. She never thought she would need it. The first attempt failed. The sparks fell on the grass but did not catch. She tried again, and again, and again. Her hands ached. Her knuckles bled from scraping against the rocks. But she did not stop on the 50th attempt. A tiny flame bloomed in the grass. Kate cupped her hands around it, protecting it from the wind, feeding it small twigs one at a time. The flame grew. It became a fire. It became heat and light and safety. She sat by her fire as the cold night came. The creatures in the darkness stayed away. They could see the light. They could feel the heat. They did not understand what it was, but they feared it. Kate added more wood to the fire and ate some of the plants she had gathered. Her stomach was not full, but it was not empty either. She had shelter. She had water. She had fire. She had tools. She was no longer just surviving. She was beginning to live. Far above, Vorath watched the small flame burning in the darkness of the alien world. She made fire, he said quietly. Many species discover fire, another arbitrator replied. Yes, Vorath agreed. But she made it on the 7th cycle. Without panic. Without waste. She gathered materials. She planned. She waited until she was ready. He paused. The test has only begun, but this human is already teaching us something interesting about her species. Kate did not know she was being watched. She did not know that the arbitrators were impressed. She only knew that she was alive, and that she intended to stay that way. She looked up at the unfamiliar stars and thought about her crew. She thought about Chris and the Resolute. She thought about Earth. All those billions of people who did not know that their future depended on one woman alone on an alien world. I won't let you down, she whispered to the stars. I promise. Then she closed her eyes and slept by her fire, dreaming of home. By the 15th cycle, Kate had built a small world for herself. Her shelter was no longer just a rocky overhang. She had reinforced it with branches woven together and packed with mud. The mud had dried in the heat of the twin suns and become hard like stone. Wind could not get through. Rain could not get through. Even the cold of night could not steal all her warmth. She had made a bed of dry grass and soft leaves. It was not comfortable by the standards of her ship, but after sleeping on bare rock, it felt like luxury. She slept better now. She dreamed less of home and more of the tasks waiting for her when she woke. The stream had become her lifeline. She visited it every morning to drink and fill containers she had made from large leaves folded and stitched with plant fiber. She had built a simple filter near the water, a pit lined with sand and charcoal from her fires. The water that passed through it was clear and clean. Food was still a challenge, but Kate was learning. She had discovered that certain roots could be dug up and roasted in her fire. They tasted like bitter potatoes, but they filled her stomach. She had built snares from cordage she wove from tough plant fibers. Small animals, things like rabbits, but with longer ears and blue fur, sometimes wandered into them. She felt bad killing them, but she needed the protein. She thanked each one before she ate it, the way her grandfather had taught her to thank the deer he hunted. Her tools had improved too. Her knife was sharper now, carefully shaped over many hours. Her spear was balanced for throwing, fire-hardened at the point. She had made a second spear, a backup in case she lost the first. She had made a simple axe for chopping wood. She had made hooks for fishing from sharpened bones. Kate never stopped working. Even when she rested, her hands were busy. She braided rope. She sharpened edges. She repaired her shelter. She planned for problems that had not happened yet. The arbitrators noticed this. She is always making something, one of them observed during their regular review of her progress. "She never simply sits. Humans call this behavior industry," Varth explained. "They are a restless species. They cannot be still for long. They must always be building, creating, improving. Is this a strength or a weakness?" "We shall see," Varth replied. "It is time to introduce variables." On cycle 18, the rain came. Kate had seen clouds gathering for 2 days. She had prepared as best she could, storing extra food and firewood inside her shelter. But she had not prepared for how much rain would fall. It came down like a waterfall from the sky. Within an hour, the small stream had become a raging river. Within 2 hours, that river had overflowed its banks. Kate watched from her shelter as water rushed toward her. She grabbed what she could carry: food, a knife, her fire-starting rocks. She ran up the cliff behind her shelter, climbing with desperate speed as the water rose below her. From the top of the cliff, she watched her shelter disappear. The water tore it apart like it was made of paper. Everything she had built over 2 weeks was gone in minutes. Her bed, her tools, her stored food. All of it washed away in the brown flood. Kate sat on the cliff top in the pouring rain. She was cold. She was wet. She was holding everything she owned in her arms. It was not much. She allowed herself to feel the loss. She let the sadness and frustration wash over her like the rain. Then she took a deep breath and stood up. "Higher ground," she said to herself. "Build on higher ground next time." She rebuilt within 2 cycles. Her new shelter was on top of the cliff, far from any water that might rise. It was smaller than before, but stronger. She had learned from her mistakes. The walls were thicker. The roof was angled to let rain run off. She dug channels in the ground around it to direct water away. The arbitrators watched her rebuild. They saw her working through exhaustion, through hunger, through the lingering cold of the flood. They saw her refuse to stop until her shelter was complete. "Resilience," Varth said. "The human recovers quickly. The flood was severe. Many species would have given up. This one did not even consider it." On cycle 22, the arbitrators sent a greater test. Kate woke to the sound of clicking. She knew that sound. She had heard it many times from a safe distance. It was the 6-legged predators, and they were close. She grabbed her spear and moved to the entrance of her shelter. In the gray light before dawn, she saw them. 5 of them, moving toward her in a line. Their flat heads swung back and forth, sensing the heat of her body. They had found her. Kate's heart pounded, but her hands were steady. She had prepared for this. She had dug a pit 2 meters in front of her shelter, hidden under a layer of thin branches and leaves. The bottom was lined with sharpened stakes she had carved from hard wood. She had hoped she would never need it. Now she was glad she had built it. She stepped out of her shelter. The predators saw her and charged. Kate stood her ground. She waited. Every instinct screamed at her to run, but she waited. The first predator was 3 meters away when it hit the pit. The thin covering broke, and the creature fell onto the stakes with a terrible scream. 2 more fell in behind it before the others could stop. The remaining 2 predators skid to a halt. They looked at the pit, at their dying companions, at the humans standing calmly on the other side. They did not understand what had happened. They only knew that something was wrong. Kate raised her spear. The predators fled. They ran into the wilderness and did not return. Kate waited until they were gone, then approached the pit carefully. 3 predators lay at the bottom, still and silent. She felt no joy in killing them, but she felt no guilt either. They would have killed her if they could. This was survival. She spent the rest of the day harvesting what she could use. The predators had tough hides that could be worked into leather. Their bones were strong and could be shaped into tools. Their meat was probably edible, though she would test it carefully before eating much. Nothing was wasted. Everything had a purpose. Far above, the Arbitrators' Council met again. 3 predators, one said. She killed 3 in a single encounter. She did not kill them, Vorth corrected. She prepared a trap and let them kill themselves. She used intelligence instead of strength. She let her enemy's aggression become their weakness. This is advanced thinking. Yes. Vorth was quiet for a moment. We have tested over 10,000 species. Very few have shown this level of planning. Very few have adapted this quickly. The test is not over. There is still time for her to fail. True, Vorth agreed. But I am beginning to wonder if she will. Kate knew nothing of this conversation. She only knew that she had survived another day. She sat by her fire that night and ate roasted root vegetables and a small piece of carefully tested predator meat. It was tough and tasted strange, but her stomach accepted it. She looked at her hands in the firelight. They were rough now, covered in small scars and calluses. They did not look like the hands of a starship commander. They looked like the hands of a survivor. 22 cycles down, she said quietly. 18 to go. She was tired. She was hungry. She was alone in a way she had never been before. But she was alive, and she was learning, and she was not going to give up. Somewhere in her mind, she heard her grandfather's voice. When life knocks you down, you get back up. You always get back up. That's what our family does. Kate smiled and added another log to her fire. She would get back up as many times as she needed to. Cycle 31 began like any other. Kate woke before dawn and checked her shelter. The walls were strong. The roof was solid. She had improved it so many times that it now felt like a real home. She had a bed of dried grass and animal hide. She had a storage area for food and tools. She had a fire pit with stones arranged around it to reflect heat into the shelter during cold nights. She ate a small breakfast of dried meat and roasted roots. Her stomach had grown used to this diet. She no longer dreamed of the food on her ship, the fresh fruits and vegetables grown in the hydroponics bay, the coffee that Chris always brewed too strong. Those memories had faded. This world was her reality now. She went to check her snares as the first sun rose over the horizon. 2 of them had caught small game during the night. She collected the animals and reset the traps, moving with the easy rhythm of long practice. She was good at this now. She was efficient. 9 cycles remained. 9 more cycles, and she would have passed the test. 9 more cycles, and humanity would be judged worthy of the stars. Kate allowed herself to feel something like hope. The ground shook at midday. At first, she thought it was thunder. The sky had been clear all morning, but weather on this world could change quickly. She looked up, expecting to see clouds. The sky was still clear. The shaking grew stronger. Kate stumbled and fell to her knees. Around her, rocks began to tumble down the cliff. Trees swayed and groaned. The earth itself seemed to be screaming. Earthquake, she realized. The word felt strange in her mind. She had read about earthquakes, but had never experienced one. Earth had stabilized its tectonics centuries ago. This was something ancient and terrible. She tried to run back to her shelter, but the ground split open in front of her. A crack appeared, narrow at first, then widening with terrifying speed. She threw herself backward, just as the ground where she had been standing collapsed into darkness. The shaking lasted for what felt like hours. In reality, it was probably less than a minute. When it finally stopped, Kate lay on her back staring at the orange sky, breathing hard. She sat up slowly and looked. Around. Her world was gone. The cliff where she had built her shelter had collapsed. Where her home had stood, there was now a pile of broken rock and torn earth. The stream had changed course, diverted by the shifting ground. Her food storage, her tools, her fire-starting rocks, Carefully prepared supplies. All of it was buried under tons of debris. Kate stood and walked to the edge of the destruction. She looked down at the rubble. Somewhere under there was everything she had worked for. Everything she had built over 31 cycles. She had her knife, which had been on her belt when the earthquake struck. She had the clothes on her back. She had nothing else. 9 cycles remained, and she had nothing. Kate sat down on a rock. Her hands were shaking, not from cold, not from exhaustion, but from something deeper. For the first time since arriving on this world, she felt something close to despair. All that work, all that planning, all those hours of careful preparation, gone in 60 seconds. She thought about her crew. She thought about Chris, waiting on the Resolute, hoping she would return. She thought about Earth, about the billions of people who would never know why they could not reach the stars. She thought about the Arbitrators, watching from somewhere above, judging her every moment. Had they caused this? Was this part of the test? It did not matter. Whether it was natural or planned, the result was the same. She had nothing. Kate closed her eyes. The twin suns beat down on her. The silence of the empty world pressed against her ears. She could hear her own heartbeat, slow and steady despite everything. She remembered being 12 years old, sitting on her grandfather's porch after a bad day at school. Some kids had made fun of her for being different, for caring about science and space when everyone else cared about parties and popularity. She had come home crying. Her grandfather had handed her a glass of lemonade and sat beside her. "Let me tell you something about the Morrison family," he had said. "We don't quit. We never have. Your great-great-grandmother walked across 1,000 miles of wilderness with nothing but a baby in her arms and a knife in her belt. Your grandmother flew combat missions when everyone told her women couldn't be pilots. Your mother raised you alone after your father died, and she never complained once." He had looked at her with those old eyes that had seen so much. "Life will knock you down, Katie. It will knock you down so hard you think you can't get up. But you can. You always can. That's what Morrisons do." Kate opened her eyes. The world was still destroyed. She still had nothing. 9 cycles still remained, but her grandfather's words echoed in her mind. And slowly she began to laugh. It was not happy laughter. It was the laughter of someone who had reached the end of despair and found something on the other side. It was the laughter of someone who refused to break. "All right," she said out loud. "All right. Start again." She stood up. Her legs were steady. Her hands had stopped shaking. She looked at the hostile world around her with new eyes. She still had her knife. She still had her knowledge. She still had her hands and her mind and 31 cycles of experience. The earthquake had taken her things, but it had not taken her. She began walking. She found a new site by late afternoon. Another rocky overhang, similar to her first shelter on the first day. The similarity made her smile. She had come full circle. She gathered materials as the suns began to set. Dry grass, small branches, larger branches, rocks with sharp edges. She worked faster than she had on the first day because she knew exactly what she needed. She had done this before. She could do it again. By nightfall, she had a small fire burning. It was nothing compared to the fire pit she had lost, just a tiny flame in the darkness. But it was enough. She did not sleep that night. She kept working. She made a new knife, sharper than the one she carried. She made a spear, rough but functional. She wove cordage from plant fibers, her fingers moving automatically in the darkness. When the suns rose on cycle 32, Kate had a basic camp established. By cycle 34, she had a real shelter again. By cycle 35, she had snare set and a fishing line in a nearby stream. The arbitrators watched in disbelief. "This is impossible," one of them said. She lost everything. She should have died. Laura said nothing. He simply watched as the human rebuilt her world for the third time. She is not even angry, another arbitrator observed. She is not crying or screaming or cursing the unfairness. She's just working. That is what humans call determination, Vareth said quietly. We have tested this species by destroying everything she built. We have pushed her to the very edge of survival. And her response is to begin again. Is this stubbornness? Vareth considered the question carefully. The human would call it something else. She would call it hope. On cycle 38, Kate caught a fish in her new stream. She cooked it over her fire and ate it slowly, savoring every bite. It was the best meal she had eaten in weeks. 2 cycles remained. She was going to make it. She could feel it in her bones. She looked up at the unfamiliar stars and thought about home. Soon, she told herself. Soon. But for now, there was work to do. There was always work to do. Kate Morrison added another log to her fire and kept building. Kate woke on cycle 40 to the sound of silence. For 39 days, she had woken to the sounds of an alien world. Winged through strange trees. The distant calls of creatures she had learned to avoid. The crackle of her fire dying down in the pre-dawn cold. But now there was nothing. Perfect, absolute silence. She sat up slowly. Her shelter was still around her. Her fire pit was still there. But something had changed. The air itself felt different. Thicker. Charged with something she could not name. Kate stood and walked outside. The twin suns were frozen in the sky, caught halfway between the horizon and their peak. The wind had stopped completely. A leaf hung in midair, suspended as if time itself had paused. Then the world dissolved. The rocky ground, the alien plants, the orange sky, all of it melted away like ice in warm water. Kate felt herself falling through light and darkness, through cold and heat, through the same terrible sensation of being taken apart and put back together that she had experienced 40 cycles ago. When the falling stopped, she was standing in a vast chamber, the walls stretched up beyond sight, made of the same smooth black metal she remembered from her first encounter with the Arbitrators. Soft white light came from everywhere and nowhere. The air was cool and clean, nothing like the thin, harsh atmosphere of the survival world. Above her floated the Arbitrators. 7 shapes of shifting smoke and ancient light. Vareth descended until he was directly in front of her, his burning eyes studying her face. Kate stood straight. 40 days of survival had changed her body. She was thinner now, harder. Her skin was darker from the twin suns. Her hands were rough with calluses and small scars. She looked nothing like the starship commander who had entered this chamber 40 cycles ago, but her eyes were the same, clear, steady, unafraid. You have survived, Vareth said. His voice echoed in her mind. Yes, Kate replied. I have. 40 cycles. Most species do not last 10. Many do not last 5. Kate said nothing. She waited. Vareth turned to look at the other Arbitrators. Something passed between them, some form of communication that Kate could not see or hear. Then Vareth turned back to her. We have tested species for millennia, he said. We have seen warriors who fought until their bodies gave out. We have seen scholars who tried to understand us and bargain with us. We have seen cowards who hid and predators who hunted. All of them failed in the end. The warriors exhausted themselves. The scholars overthought every problem. The cowards starved in their hiding places. The predators attracted attention from larger predators. Kate listened carefully. You did none of these things, Vareth continued. You did not fight unless you had to. You did not hide unless it was wise. You did not overthink. You did not rush. You simply survived. That was the test, Kate said. Survive. Yes, But how you survive reveals everything about your species. Vorith moved closer. You watched before you acted. You learned before you tried. You built tools not just for today's problems, but for tomorrow's. You prepared for dangers that had not yet arrived. And when we destroyed everything you built, you did not curse us. You did not despair. You simply started again. Kate thought about the earthquake. That was you? Yes, it is part of the test. We break things. We want to see how species respond to total loss. And how did I respond? Vorith was silent for a moment. You laughed. Then you went back to work. Kate almost smiled. My grandfather taught me that. Get knocked down, get back up. It's what Morrisons do. Morrisons? My family. My ancestors. They've been surviving hard things for a long time. Vorith tilted his strange head. This is something we see rarely. You carry knowledge from those who came before you. You did not survive alone. You survived with the teachings of your ancestors in your mind. Kate nodded. Every fire I built, my grandfather taught me. Every snare I made, I learned from books my mother gave me. Every time I wanted to give up, I heard their voices telling me to keep going. They were with me the whole time. The chamber was quiet. Then Vorith spoke again. And his voice was different now, softer, almost respectful. Humanity is judged worthy. Kate let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. 40 cycles of tension flowed out of her body like water. You may continue your expansion into the stars, Vorith continued. We will not interfere. Your species has proven itself capable of survival, adaptation, and growth. These are the qualities that deserve to walk among the stars. Thank you, Kate said. The words felt strange, too simple for the weight of what had just happened. Do not thank us. You earned this. Your species earned this through your actions. Kate hesitated. There was something she needed to ask, even though she was not sure she wanted the answer. What would have happened if I failed? If I died on that world? Vorith was silent for a long moment. Humanity would have been contained. Your species would have been limited to your home star system. Your ships would have been unable to travel beyond your solar boundaries. You would have lost the drive to explore, the curiosity that pushed you outward. You would have remained on your planet until your son died, never knowing what you had lost. Kate felt cold. That's a heavy punishment. It is not punishment. It is protection. The galaxy is vast and dangerous. Species that cannot survive alone should not be allowed to spread. They would only cause suffering for themselves and others. Kate wanted to argue, but she understood. The Arbitrators were not cruel. They were ancient beings who had seen the rise and fall of countless civilizations. They had learned hard lessons about who should be allowed to walk among the stars. One more question, Kate said. Ask. You've tested thousands of species. How many passed? Vorith did not answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was quiet. Of 10,000 species tested over 3 million years, 412 have passed. You are the 413th. Kate absorbed this. 413 species out of 10,000. Less than 5%. What happened to the others? They live on their homeworlds. They are happy in their way. They do not remember the stars. They do not feel the loss of something they never knew they wanted. Kate thought about that. A whole species forever trapped on one planet, never knowing that the universe was waiting for them. Never knowing that they had failed a test they did not remember taking. That seems sad, she said. Perhaps. Or perhaps it is kind. They are protected from a universe they could not survive. Vorith paused. But your species will not face that fate. You have proven yourselves. You have earned your place among the stars. The chamber began to shift around Kate. She felt the familiar sensation of being moved, transported, taken somewhere else. "Wait," she called out. "Will I ever see you again? Will humanity ever meet the Arbitrators again?" Vorath's voice echoed in her mind as the chamber faded around her. "Perhaps. The universe is vast, and time is long. If your species continues to grow and learn and survive, our paths may cross again. Until then, walk well among the stars, Commander Kate Morrison. You have made your ancestors proud." Then the chamber was gone, and Kate was standing on the bridge of the Resolute. For a moment, everything was silent. Then Chris Lawson turned around from his station and saw her standing there. His face went white. His mouth opened, but no words came out. "Hi, Chris," Kate said. Her voice was rough from weeks of disuse. "I'm back." The bridge exploded into chaos. People were shouting, crying, running toward her. Chris reached her first and pulled her into a hug so tight she could barely breathe. Others followed, her crew, her family, the people she had been fighting to save. Kate let them hold her. She let the tears come, hers and theirs mixing together. She had been alone for so long. She had almost forgotten what it felt like to be surrounded by people who loved her. When the chaos finally settled, when the tears had stopped and the questions began, Kate looked out the viewport at the darkness of space. The Arbitrator ship was gone. There was only stars, endless stars, stretching out forever in every direction. Humanity had earned those stars. Kate had earned them with patience and planning and the stubborn refusal to give up. Her grandfather had earned them through the lessons he passed down. Her mother had earned them through the strength she showed every day. Every human who had ever survived hard times, who had ever built something from nothing, who had ever gotten knocked down and gotten back up again, they had all earned humanity's place among the stars. Kate smiled and turned back to her crew. "Set course for the nearest colony," she said. "I need a real meal, a real bed, and about 3 days of sleep. After that, we have a report to file." Chris laughed through his tears. "Understood, Commander. It's good to have you back. It's good to be back." Kate settled into her command chair and watched the star stream past as the Resolute jumped to faster-than-light travel. She was tired. She was hungry. She had 40 cycles of surviving to recover from, but she was home. And humanity was free. That was worth everything.